Welcome to the Lovish Podcast, a practical weekly podcast centered on mental wellness, faith, relationships, and you guessed it, love. I'm your host, Sita Hood, a licensed clinical social worker. Now, sis, I should mention before we hop into the show, this is not a substitute for a relationship with a licensed therapist. You ready? Let's get it. Okay, welcome back for another episode of the Lovish Podcast. It is Sita. I am your host. And like I always say in every episode, let's just jump right into the tea, okay? Because ain't nobody got time to waste, okay? We got stuff to do. We got places to be. Hustling is keeping you from being successful. Hustling. Right? Now, I know people are like, what? How could that be the case? Like, we are taught to hustle hard, right? The thing that you want most in the world, the thing that keeps you up at night, the thing that feels so close yet so far out of your reach is freedom, right? Freedom to live your life how you want to, freedom to set the tone of your day, freedom to buy whatever you want to buy. You want freedom to take vacations whenever you want, freedom to set your schedule. And if we're keeping it real, you're tired of money being a block for you. Does that feel familiar? You just want the freedom to live life on your own terms. You're tired of waking up every day and using every ounce of energy to show up for other people in your life. You're tired of that and you really want to experience the finer things in life. Not to be vain, not because you're greedy, but literally because you just want to live. You're tired of it being your story that you struggle being a consistent part of your story, and money dictating what's possible for you in life, for other people dictating what's possible for you in life. You're tired of that. You're tired of money dictating where you can and can't go. And you've had this desire so deeply ingrained in you for so long. It's the reason that you press forward through the exhaustion. It's the reason that you won't stop hustling hard. Now, I know people look at you and they look at your accomplishments and they be like, yes, girl. They're so impressed. But yet and still, you feel like it's not enough. You still haven't actually hit your target. So even though you're tired, you push through and you keep going. And every time it feels like you get one step closer, and I mean your hand is literally right there on the doorknob to your freedom, something else yanks you back, yanks you away from that door, yanks you away from the vision that you have for your life, the thing that's sitting right in front of you, the thing that you want. And you feel like you're caught in a rabbit hole. Just like Alice in Wonderland, you are searching for the key to your freedom. You're searching and it seems like it's pure madness because you ask this person and nothing that they say makes sense. You ask that person and you try their method, but it doesn't really seem like it works for you. You were right there. You were literally right there. You were so close. And as you tumble down this rabbit hole like Alice, nobody seems like they're thinking straight. Nothing seems to make sense. So you believe that the answer is actually to go harder, to go stronger, because tears is not even possible. Tears make me look like I'm weak, so I can't even do that. I don't even have the time to cry. You watch all of these videos on YouTube. You see all these social media influencers, and just like Alice, you sample everybody's method to see if it works for you. You sampling over here, you sampling over there. And some people, they make you feel so small when you try their methods and it doesn't work. It makes you feel like you failed. And it makes you feel unseen, and they make you feel like your methods, the way that you move through life, is so insignificant and your worth isn't there. While other people put really high and seemingly impossible standards on you, right? They want you to accomplish so much. They're like, girl, you have done so much in your life. You that girl, look at all these accomplishments you got behind you. So I know you can do it. And you're fighting, you're pushing, you're pressing for your significance, for your worth, for your freedom. And just like Alice, you got to make a decision today. You literally do. You can't afford to keep moving forward in that same pattern. Each person that Alice ran into had an ulterior motive. Alice's motive was to get to freedom, right? To figure out how to get those keys that she lost to the door, which held her prize, right? But every person that she went to had a motive. They wanted something from her. They had ulterior motives that were dressed up as fancy pieces of advice that would suit her. But in reality, it didn't help her find herself. It didn't help her get the peace that she was after. So Alice had to make a choice to stop buying into the hustle. Now I know Ace Hood told us to hustle hard, right? But the reality is that your hustle is keeping you from being successful. That's the truth. It's keeping you from being successful. It's actually the thing that is preventing you from growing. One definition for hustling, because y'all know I love definitions. One definition for hustling means to obtain by forceful action. We could just stop right there, to be honest, because when something is for you, you don't have to force it. It's just going to flow. It's just going to be in alignment. God will simply bring things into alignment at the appointed time. The other definition for hustling is to move forward hurriedly. Yes, that's a word, y'all. In a specified direction. Now, I like to think of this as hustling responsibly, because naturally we know that there are seasons of life where you do have to hustle. You do have to pick up the pace and get some things done, right? You have to move at an accelerated pace in order to be thrust into that next season and to get to your freedom for that level, right? But the problem is when you settle into hustling as a lifestyle. Hustling was never meant to be a lifestyle. It's a thing that you do for a particular season to advance you to your next, not a lifestyle. That's why you burn out. Just like Alice, maybe you were looking for a quick or semi-quick fix. So you're looking around you and you're mimicking what this person is doing. You're mimicking what that person's doing because, it kind of seemed like it worked well for them. But here's what I want to say to you today. You were meant to be an original work of art, not a counterfeit version of several works. Right? You were designed to impact the earth very differently. So you are caught up maybe in a culture that has tried to make hustling sexy. And there's the current counterculture battling to say like, yeah, we want a soft life. We want to experience a soft life. And it's like, okay, I know I'm going to step on some of y'all toes because some of y'all on here are like, okay, I want the soft life. I'm here for the soft parts of life. But I feel like a soft life is also very unrealistic because a soft life keeps your head in the clouds where, it's like, I just want peace. I just want this. I just want that. That's a beautiful thing to strive for. But ultimately, if all you are seeking is the peace and the fun and the relaxation, who's handling the problems? Okay. Who's doing that? Who's paying the bills? Who's working? So this is why we aim for a more balanced approach. So you have to find the middle ground between hustling hard and the soft life, hustling responsibly when it is required. So I'm going to give you a couple of tips today. If you are watching or listening to this podcast episode, I'm going to give you a couple of tips to recover from burnout and hustling hard. I think that most people may not be aware of how hard the pandemic actually hit, right? So you recognize that life shifted when the pandemic happened. You recognize that maybe something inside of you has shifted, something in your home has shifted, but you're not exactly sure how deep that goes. You have had a life shift and possibly even collective trauma with all the violence that came with the pandemic and the overturning of Roe versus Wade and the aftermath of all of that. So it's okay that you need a break. It's okay if you're burned out. There's no way that you could have lived through all of that and not been impacted, unless you live completely off the grid. And even then, I would say that some parts of your life have probably been impacted because, if you needed corn or groceries or something like that from your local place, that still impacts you. How fast you get your stock, for whatever reason, the word just is not coming to my mind, y'all. But y'all know what I'm talking about. If you have a supplier that brings food or whatever into your small town, even if you're off the grid, there is some sort of impact that this pandemic has had on your life. And so I'm going to give you the tips for bouncing back after burnout. But the truth is, if you experience burnout, then you're probably in need of a life shift. You need to live life or approach life differently to avoid coming back to this point again. But we're going to get to that in a minute. So creativity is at the core of our existence, right? Creativity is in everything, everybody. Even if you don't view what you do as being creative, it's still there. Right? Just because you can't spot your own creativity doesn't mean you are not a creative person. Everything that you do in different ways that you do it, the way that your brain works, you are creative. So, you were designed to be creative and a witty individual. And when your creativity is stifled, then life becomes a bit more challenging. So I want to just give you some tips to kind of overcome the challenge of that. Tip 1. And I feel like you already know what I'm going to say. Admit that burnout is happening. We cannot solve or resolve any issue if we don't actually admit that there is an issue. So at one point or another, most hardworking people experience burnout. So the first thing that I want you to know is that it's okay. If you've reached this point, it's okay. It says absolutely nothing about your worth, nothing about your value, nothing about who you are as a person to have reached this point. And by saying it says nothing about who you are as a person, I mean negatively, because everybody experiences this at some point in time. It means that you're human, and burning out as a human is totally allowed, right? Now, we don't want to necessarily celebrate burnout, but the upside of reaching this point is that it likely means that you are 100% dedicated to the task, right? You are 100% dedicated to the work that you're doing, the mission that you believe in, even if that's like with your own business or trying to go for a promotion on your job or even running your household the best that you can. It means that you are dedicated to that process, and that is why you have found yourself reaching this point of burnout. But we have to flip it to the point where your value is not caught up in your worth, right? We don't want your value to be caught up in your worth. And if you want more information about that, then I would encourage you to see episode 54, the one just before this, about performative self-acceptance. That one is already out, so go ahead and check that out, because I deep dive into finding your value and your worth in the things that you do. So the first step is to admit that you're struggling. Even if you only admit it to yourself, you have to be real. That's number one. Number two, and I'm about to step on some toes of some people that's on this live, because I see a lot of hardworking women on this live. Y'all ready for this? Do the opposite of what you think you should be doing. Rest. Rest. Rest, rest, rest. The cure for burnout is rest. Truly. 9 times out of 10, when you have reached this stage, you feel like you can't stop hustling, and it's because your to-do list is never ending. Every time you accomplish a goal, you're judging how precisely and how perfectly you executed that goal. Well, it could still be better over here. I'm going to do this better next time. I'm going to get a better head start. And so then you set another goal that is not impossible, but is just far reaching, and it's going to take a lot out of you to obtain that goal. That's what keeps us in the trap of burnout. So every time you reach a goal, you're sitting there judging yourself because you don't think that you measured up quite good enough or properly. So you set another goal, and not just a simple goal, right? Another far-reaching goal that's not impossible, but it requires deeper levels of stretching. When you're already stretched thin, your capacity is like, you are at the brim, and you're trying to stretch out more. You're trying to pull out more. So I want you to rest. Rest is essential for productivity. Rest is essential for productivity. Rest is essential for productivity. Rest allows your brain to reboot and to recharge. You know how you use your electronics and then they start to get super hot when you've been like really going in, when they're overworked? And sometimes they simply just shut down. Yeah, you know, type it in the chat if you know. Have you ever had one of those days where you are sitting on the couch and you're like, man, I got a laundry list of things to do, but it feels like I just can't even peel my body off the couch to get to the list and actually do the things? Or you feel like you are so lazy because you know that you have a gang of things to do, but your body and your mind won't work in alignment. That's your shutdown indicator. That's your indicator, okay? That's your body saying, hey, I cannot function this way right now. Good old Beyonce. She told us back in 2008, I told you, give me a minute and I'll be right back, right? She took a minute, okay? So while y'all over here doing the most, you have to take a break. This is what your body is saying. You need a break. And I would also challenge you to see productivity differently. So a lot of times when we get in that mode where we feel like, okay, I can't like function at this point. I feel like I'm being so lazy. You have to take a break. Like, you're being productive mentally when you take those breaks and you're not doing anything. It is productive for you to rest your physical temple. Your body has to reboot. So at this point, we're going to pause and have a word from our sponsor for this episode. Hey, I got a question for you. What are you doing August 25th at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time? Nothing? Okay, cool. I want to invite you to join me for the Lovish Podcast anniversary episode. Yes, we turned 1 this month. I can't even believe that it's been a whole year of these podcast episodes, hearing from you, recording these episodes live, answering your questions. So in celebration of the podcast turning 1, I'm going to be hosting a live show. Best part, you get to be a part of the show. So we will be featuring live Q&A. You can come on camera if you want, or you can just submit your questions in the chat. And then we're going to be engaging in one of my favorite things to do, giveaways. In order to be chosen for a giveaway, though, you've got to register. So if you're interested in joining me for this anniversary episode, click the link in the show notes and sign up to register so that you can get the link, your exclusive RSVP pass, to join me in this recording. All right, I hope I see you there. Talk soon. Bye. Okay, welcome back. I hope that I see you at the podcast anniversary show. Trust me, it's going to be so exciting and fun. I always enjoy when I do these shows live with you guys. All right, let's jump back in. So a lot of my clients get really stuck on this concept of performative self-acceptance without even realizing it, which is why I encourage you to answer the question, to pause and answer the question at the beginning of the episode, whether you really truly liked yourself or liked who you are. Because a lot of people's first response is, yeah, of course. But if you think about it, you really like the things that you do. You like yourself and you believe that you're worthy only based on the fact that your productivity is at an all-time high. I saw this quote or this meme that was floating around. I'm not sure who it was from several years ago that said, Black and brown women often think that they are failing when they are not productive. But in reality, a large part of that is based in trauma and anxiety. And I couldn't agree more with that post. It's all connected: trauma, anxiety, and this performative self-acceptance, because this is how we were raised, to wear it as a badge of honor. So when you're not at an all-time high with your productivity, you feel like you're failing and you're struggling to love yourself in that particular season. And truthfully, so many of us are actually caught up in this narrative that when somebody like me points it out, you might get upset. Or you might think to yourself or say to yourself, okay, this is not what I was looking for when I signed up for this program, or when I signed up to work with you, or when I signed up, for fill in the blank. And to that, I usually say to my clients, it might not be what you were looking for, but it's what you need. You need a hard confrontation of the truth. And here's why. You cannot be a woman of influence, a woman who changes lives, a woman who genuinely invests in her vision and her future if you don't accept yourself without the performance. You will not live every day of your life at optimal performance levels. And because of that, you need to know how to love on yourself in the in-between phases. You need to know that you're still valuable in the in-between phases, because otherwise you will hinder yourself. You will stop yourself from progressing forward, feeling like what you're doing is a mistake. And it's a cycle that you have to work through, that you have to go through, that you have to keep pushing through in order to come to accept yourself without this performance piece. So start today. Divorce yourself from the narrative that you have to perform in order to be accepted. Divorce yourself from the narrative that productivity has to look a certain way. I talk to so many women that beat themselves up because they weren't as productive as they like to be. And there are a lot of ways that you are being productive that aren't the average views of productivity. So we talk about like mental wellness and emotional wellness. Have you ever actually stopped to examine that those have their own productivity indicators? So if you find yourself exhausted and you can't finish that report, so you have a lazy day and you watch TV all day or you read a book, that was still being productive. And usually when I say this, people are like, what? How? But I didn't do anything. It was productive for your mental and your emotional wellness. And that's what matters, because your mental and your emotional wellness are the foundation for your creativity. You need creativity to show up and slay your workday. You need to be optimized spiritually, physically, emotionally, and everything in between in order to be creative. So when your body conked out on you and you took a lazy day, that was actually your body letting you know, like, girl, you've been doing too much and we can't keep doing this. We need to chill right now. So yeah, I get that you had this super long 10 check off list to tend to today, but I can't do that. I need to reset. And so we have to get into the habit of honoring our bodies, honoring our minds, honoring what we need, and not feeling guilty about that. Because let me tell you something, even Jesus rested after 7 days. Now, come on. Come on. You're not greater than God now. If God needed a break after putting in work for 7 days or 6 days, right? Who do you think you are? So that lazy day guilt that you have, I need you to release the guilt today because you were being productive for your body and your mind. We have to reframe how we see productivity. Also, I would argue that if you find yourself taking more lazy days than you would like, you probably need to reconfigure your entire life system. I talk to people about this all the time. Yes, we have goals. Yes, we have visions. And I think that the idea of being attached to a schedule or routine consistently for a month, a year, etc., sounds really good, but we don't leave space enough for life changes and life transitions with seasons or even the ways that we feel. We don't leave room for, maybe somebody in my family has something change. And now because of their change, for example, maybe my husband switched shifts on his job, which now requires me to switch around my schedule for picking up the kids or dropping off the kids or dinner. So then the system that worked for me before might not work for me in this season. So most of the time, if you find yourself needing a gang of lazy days all backed up, you just need to reevaluate your system. And that's a whole nother episode, but essentially, you're doing too much and you're not leaving enough space for wellness. Wellness is a daily practice. It is a lifestyle, not just a small thing that we do, like something as simple as like a self-care hour or whatever. Like that's okay. Those are fine. But wellness is a much larger picture. We practice spiritual wellness by praying, by reading the Bible, by meditating. We practice physical wellness by honoring our body and not overworking ourselves in the gym, by nourishing your body and feeding it what it wants, by engaging in physical activities that strengthen our body. We practice mental and emotional wellness by saying no when something is out of alignment with our vision for life. Being around people who challenge us yet who bring us joy, resting when our minds require it. So do you see how this would change your life by adopting this perspective? By understanding that wellness is a lifestyle and by viewing that wellness is a lifestyle, by viewing that productivity can be in several different departments, how you are being productive, how no matter what you do, if you practice acceptance that is not based on your productivity, not based on this performance or checking things off your to-do list, that would dramatically change your life. It's so much deeper than the surface level of self-care that's on social media. Wellness builds you up to be able to think clearly and accept yourself regardless of your performance in life. So you don't have to attach those things together. And this is the Lavish Podcast, and we talk about the meaning of love pretty often. So what is love? Love allows you the space to be you. Love accepts you for who you are and where you are. So that means that even if I want something that I see as better for you, greater for you, I can still love you regardless of whether, you hit my standard or not. And who said that my standard was the standard? Love is also invested in you and your long-term growth. So again, with the same sort of concept in mind, even if you're not hitting the standard, if I see the potential in you to hit that standard, loving you through your phase of coming to understand who you are. Even if I don't understand who you are, even if, you never reach my particular standard or my thought about where you should be, choosing to love you regardless. Sadly, women of color have grown accustomed to the idea that stretching yourself thin is a pattern of living or a badge of honor. Is that you? You can be honest. Raise your hand. Raise your hand. I'm not talking to you in the front. I'm talking to you way back there in the back, trying to hide. Yeah, It's time to let that go. Because when we don't measure up to our impossible standards, we feel like we're failing. You are not failing. That's what I want you to know today. You're not failing. The pieces are simply falling into place. But the work that you have to do is to divorce yourself from the idea that you have to be doing in order to be accepted. In order to be accepted, you only need to be. So again, divorce yourself from the idea that you have to do all of these things and accept that you only have to be the woman that God created. You only have to be yourself.
Girl, what you been listening to? What you been watching? What you been reading? Media Queens, what's up?
Oh my gosh, I feel like it's been such a long time since we have done a Media Queen segment. And truthfully, I think it's because I've had so many guests on the show. I want you to know that my media has not stopped, right? Media is one of the ways that I feed myself, or that I practice wellness. I'm a very intellectual person, and that doesn't mean like, oh, I'm better than somebody, I'm intellectual. No, that just means that I thoroughly enjoy intellectual conversations about life and different scenarios and things like that. So with that being said, I'm an intellectual person, which means I have not stopped reading, even though I haven't done a Media Queen segment for a while. And I definitely have not stopped watching shows. Now, I might have slowed down a little bit because of my time finishing this doctorate, but I'm still here for all my Media Queens. So, one of the books that I read recently that I think was just absolutely amazing was The Family Upstairs by Lisa Jewell. If you have read this book, let me know. And I'm not sure if I told you guys, but I love psycho thrillers. And this was a good psycho thriller. And so I'm trying not to give very much away. And I know I haven't said anything yet, but that's the reason why I haven't said anything. So without giving too much away, the basis of this entire book is built on a desire for acceptance and how horribly wrong one turn of your life can take you when you seek acceptance outside of you versus being okay with who you are, regardless of how your life is turning out. Again, kind of without revealing too much of the storyline, there are, I think, several people that really wanted acceptance from people in the book. It's members of a family or separate. Let me see. Yeah, I'll keep it right there because I don't want to spoil it if you want to read it. But some people chose to go to the extreme version of trying to be accepted onto like changing what they look like, what they talk like, all of these different things. And if you remember back on the guest episode with Ashley, we talked about how it seems far-fetched to make all these compromises, but in reality, in relationships where you want acceptance, you're often making a lot of micro compromises and you don't even realize it. And then by the time you turn around, you are a completely different person from how you wanted to start off because of all the micro compromises that you've made. So here's the hard truth for self-acceptance. You are never in control anyway. That's one that's like, ouch. But just like a toddler, if you sit a toddler on your lap and, maybe you're in a parking lot and you let the toddler kind of play with the steering wheel, the toddler thinks that they're actually driving the car if you let them take control. And they might have a small amount of control, like which direction the car goes in, but ultimately it's your foot on the gas. It's your foot on the brake. So when you can get comfortable with being in the palm of God's hands and allowing him to mold you and shape you and knowing that you have a little bit of say so, given your free will on the direction that things go in, but ultimately God's foot is on the gas or God's foot is on the brake. When you can learn to accept that, self-acceptance becomes just a little bit easier, and life does too. Not perfect, just a little easier. All right. In today's episode, we talked about performative self-acceptance. We talked about how hard it is when you are in the mode of attaching your worth to your productivity, but also the need to break away from attaching your worth to your productivity. We also talked about the ways that productivity can look different. So I don't necessarily have to be taking things off of my list in order to be productive, because maybe what my body needs for productivity is just for me to relax for the day. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, share the love. Share it with your auntie, share it with your mama, share it with your best friend. And then once you've shared the podcast episode, head on over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a 5-star review. Reviews help the podcast to grow. Well, that is all I have for you this week. I'll see you out on these social media streets. When are you going to stop pretending like you're Superwoman? Yes, I know you believe if you don't do it, it won't get done. Take a deep breath and pause with me for a moment here. You're doing too much. You know it and I know it. Let's stop pretending and get you some relief starting today. Do you set weekly wellness goals? If not, you've got to start. No more leaving yourself last on your to-do list. I want you to download the Confident Bae app and start using the weekly wellness tracker now. It's 100% free to use, and it comes with a digital journal to help you process thoughts and feelings on the go. You can even meet a tribe of like-minded women inside of Bae's Digital Cafe. I'm serious. Take off your cape, take a deep breath, and download the app at thepinkemerald.com/app or hit the link in the show notes. Tip number 3, be open to how creativity comes, even if it's different, okay? Because we are human, we have a need for change and for transformation. So it means that all the things that we do have the potential to become mundane, boring, etc. to us. And so, for example, if you've always sparked creativity by like sitting in a library and reading, maybe you need to switch it up and actually go to a museum. Maybe you spark creativity by observing people in a coffee shop, right? Look at creativity differently and search for inspiration in everything. God said that everything that he made was good. So this means that he had a specific design, a specific layout, a system for why things work the way that they work. He designed these things intelligently and put his stamp of approval on it. So with that in mind, it's up to us to discover with a fresh set of eyes the different things that can spark creativity in our environment. If you're feeling like you've rested and you still can't tap into your creative side, then that might be a sign that you still need to rest. You maybe didn't allow yourself enough time to rest. And sometimes creativity comes as we're simply doing nothing. Sometimes if I'm resting, I might be watching TV or reading a book or something like that, or watching my daughter's dance class, and an idea pops into my head based on something that they did or something that I saw. You never know when and where inspiration will strike, okay? Tip number 4, and it's going to be our final tip for this episode, make a game plan and redesign your life system. So this is actually going to be, well, all of the tips are important, but this one, you cannot skip this one, okay? Because if you skip this one, you'll be right back to burnout in a little bit. So earlier in the episode, we talked about, measuring the frequency at which you experience burnout. If it's a frequent visitor in your life, or if this particular episode of burnout hits you very deeply, it's probably a sign that you need to redesign your life systems. We have goals, we make goals, we love our goals, but then sometimes we wing it with the plan of action, right? We don't develop or take the time to develop a well-functioning system to help us to reach our goals. And then we feel overwhelmed because our goals feel really chaotic. Life feels really chaotic, and we lose sight of the end point because we didn't take the time to assess, well, what system will allow me to get there properly? So, if you have been on my social media pages, my website, anything like that, you know that I'm also a vision architect. And so I help people to develop those systems and those strategies. And so we talk a lot about that, like how to put these life systems in place. I'm not going to deep dive into it, but just like at the very core, at the basic level, when you are designing a system or a strategy for life, what you want to consider is what is currently working in your life and what is not working. What has shifted in your life and what do you need to make some changes for, in what areas? So for example, if, I used to trade off who picks up the children with my husband, but now my husband works a weird midday shift where he can't get the kids. Now it's maybe going to be hard for me to work longer days at the office because I have to pause on those days where he used to pick up the kids. And now I have to do that. So I have to reassess the way my system is working and the way that it is functioning. Make sense? Give me a thumbs up if it makes sense. All right. It's time to talk about what I've been loving. Product recommendations, shout outs to family and friends, and overall gratitude. Let's get into it. All right, welcome back to the part of the show where we are practicing gratitude, and I am telling you what it is that I have been loving for this week. This week, I've been loving soaking up the last few days of summer with my children, and honestly, never thought I would be saying this, but soaking up my last moments as a doctoral student. Just because I'm soaking these things up does not mean that I'm not ready for things to change. I am 100% ready for my child, my daughter, to go back to school. And I am 150% ready to be done with school. But what I recognize is that I will never get these moments back. And so I try to intentionally be fully present in all of these moments. So that is what I've been loving this week. What about you? If you are watching the replay of this live on Instagram, drop it in the comments. What are you loving this week? What are you grateful for? We've already had some people on the live share what they're grateful for. If you're listening to this episode on the podcast, take a screenshot, tag me, whatever, on social media, and let me know what it is that you are loving. All right. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of the Lovish podcast. In today's episode, we talked about how to ignite creativity after burnout. I gave you 4 tips for getting started and getting that creativity back ignited after you've experienced burnout. 1, we have to be honest about the fact that we are experiencing burnout so that we can recover. 2, we have to do the opposite of what we think we should be doing, which is getting some rest. 3, you must be open to creativity and how it comes, because it's probably going to hit you very differently. And then 4, make a game plan and redesign your life system. Well, that is all I have for you for this episode. If you enjoyed this episode, share the love. Share it with your friends, share it with your mama, share it with anybody that you know and you feel like it might be helpful for. And then I want you to head on over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a 5-star review. Reviews help the podcast to grow. Well, that is all I have for you today. I will see you out in these social media streets.